that funny.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Chris with the Morning Mayhem. Welcome back for our second show. If you tuned in last week for the first show, thanks and welcome back. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome to the Mayhem. We did kind of jump in pretty hard and heavy last week, in the deep end, so to speak, talking about some controversial topics. Of course, we're going to talk about the Rona. We're going to talk about some, other spicy topics today, to kind of recap last week, kind of recap where we're at on the year so far. Last week, we talked a lot about 2021. So we're going to cover a little bit more about 2022, things that are going on now, things that are going to be coming out soon. We're going to be talking about a lot of the movies that are coming out this year, some to look for. My take on and thoughts on some of them based off the trailers and what I've heard about them. And so we'll dive into that in just a little bit. But first, we can't get really going until we talk about COVID.
We have a number of mitigations to control spread. The most important remains the testing of interstate arrivals. The mask mandate has been in effect since Friday. While masks reduce the risk of spread, the mandate needs to be supplemented. That is why today we've made 3 further decisions to control community transmission in the Territory. There will be a territory-wide lockout from 1 p.m. today until noon Monday. From noon Monday, we will commence a vaccine pass system in the Territory. Only residents and essential workers may enter excluded communities in the Northern Territory, and they must have a negative RAT on the day of entry. First, the lockout. The fully vaccinated can continue as they were. For people who are not vaccinated, lockdown rules will apply to everyone 16 and above. If you are not fully vaxxed, stay home. You are at greater risk of catching COVID, becoming ill, and needing hospital care. You may only leave home for 3 reasons. Medical treatment, including COVID testing or vaccination. For essential goods and services like groceries, power tokens, medications. To provide care and support to a family member or person who cannot support themselves. You cannot travel more than 30 kilometres from your home when leaving for one of the 3 reasons. There are only 3 reasons to leave the home now, not 5. Work is not a reason to leave the home for the unvaccinated. The Chief Health Officer has also determined that restriction of movement is critical right now, and that 1 hour of exercise for the next 4 days is not essential. Remember, these restrictions only apply to those who are not fully vaccinated. There has been plenty of time for people to get vaccinated. People who are not fully vaccinated present the greatest risk of spreading the virus and are the most at risk of becoming seriously ill if they get the virus.
All right, so I know that's a lot to unpack. There's several things that he stated there that are really questionable, alarming, seem a little excessive maybe, and maybe some common sense ones too. One of which, all right, so people coming into Australia being tested. I get it. No desire to bring that nastiness into the country. Now, there's some countries, this one, that don't test people like they should as they enter the country, which don't make a whole lot of sense to me, but that's a whole, another story for another day. But they talked about not camps, but quarantine facilities we'll talk about in just a second. But some of the things that were really interesting to me, you can't go exercising because COVID. Now, this is just for unvaccinated. Vaccine, you can do whatever you want, even though they call them breakout cases are happening, which is funny because it seems like, a good portion of the people that are vaccinated are having breakout cases. So I don't think you can really call them breakout cases anymore, but that's not stopping them from doing it. So you can't exercise. You can't travel more than 30, I think he says 30 kilometers, which I guess COVID can only go so far. There's curfews in place. So COVID can only come, during certain times of the day. It basically reminds me of them saying that you have to wear your mask when you enter a restaurant, when you walk to your table, when you sit down, but then you can take it off to eat and talk, when the mask is meant to block the particles coming from your mouth. Well, you're not usually doing a bunch of, either mouth breathing or talking necessarily on the way to the table as much as you are at the table. Right? Or on planes. I've heard they do the same thing, but you don't have to wear a mask if you're eating. You do have to wear it if you're not eating or drinking. That makes about as much sense as you can only go 30 kilometers or you can only go out at certain times of the day. What does COVID know when you're out and about? Come on, man. Where's that?
Come on, man.
Yeah, for real. All right, so let's check this out. All right, so here's an article from Northern Territory government, again, from Australia. It talks about the quarantine facilities. I won't go too deep into this, by the way. Any articles that I use that are in the browser over here, if you see me scrolling through it, you can scroll through it too. The links are going to be in the description below. I do encourage you to do your own research. I do encourage you to look behind me to make sure I didn't just skip through and pick out certain things that I wanted to talk about. So I do encourage you to do that, which is different than CNN and a lot of the other guys. So quarantine facilities. There are 2 mandatory supervised quarantine facilities in the North Territory: Center for National Resilience in Howard Springs, Darwin, Alice Springs Quarantine Facility, Alice Springs. And this is for people coming into the country. You're required to quarantine at the facility closest to your entry into the Northern Territory unless otherwise directed by the Chief Health Officer or their delegate. Returning Australians on the Commonwealth facilitated flights into the Northern Territory will undertake their quarantine at the Center for National Resilience. So Australians coming back versus foreigners coming in. I get all that. You got your face mask stuff here. What happens when you quarantine? One of the things that I saw was interesting, and I think it's here under the facilities. It tells you what you can and can't bring. You're pretty limited on that. Meals are pretty limited there, it looks like, on options. But the Center for National Resilience is primarily single room accommodation with no internal connecting doors. There are 4 rooms to a shared veranda space with mattress and or cots provided for small children. All rooms are king single beds and have in suites. The Alice Springs quarantine facility can accommodate families in shared rooms, but based on room availability at the time. And I was reading that somewhere else in here too, that there's not always family rooms available. So what happens to the families that come into the country that are not fully vaccinated? Are they split up? Are they separated? Or are they forced to live in a small little room? And it does say in here about the testing that you will be tested on the 1st, 5th, and 12th day. These tests are a nose and throat swab. If you do not undergo a test, you will be required to remain in quarantine a further 7 days at your own expense. So again, I understand some of this stuff, but I feel like that's where they get you. And that's where they got us for our 15 days. I don't know if you guys remember 15 days to slow the spread. That was almost 2 years ago. But they hooked us with that. And now here we are. We're looking at finishing off year 2, going into year 3 of 15 days to flatten the curve. So while some of this makes sense, a lot of it seems extreme to me. So they're trying to hook you on that it makes sense part. Sorry, I at some point you have to just say no, right? Enough's enough. So Australia, brothers and sisters over there, good luck to you. I know you let them take your guns away and everything, so you can't really fight back a tyrannical government, but you know, do what you got to do. Moving here to America, let's look at something that we've got going on here.
So Chief Judge Sutton pointed out in his dissent from the denial of initial en banc.
All right, so this is the voice of Amy Coney
OSHA did
Barrett of the
not
Supreme
adopt
Court.
this rule in response to the quiet emergency, because that had been ongoing since early 2020. But instead, it responded to new facts on the ground, which included the widespread availability of a vaccine that maybe it was a surprise many people chose to forego, and the emergence of the Delta variant. And Chief Judge Sutton pointed out that in an extended pandemic, or I don't know if we've moved to an endemic such as this one, facts will continually change. New variants will emerge. There might be new treatments, new vaccinations. We have boosters now, right? So now full vaccination might not just be the 2 jabs. It might include a booster as well. So when does the emergency end? I mean, a lot of this argument has been about Congress's failure to act. 2 years from now, do we have any reason to think that COVID will be gone or that new variants might not be emerging? And when must OSHA actually resort to its regular authority and go through notice and comment, and not simply be kind of doing it in this quick way, which doesn't afford people the voice in the process that they're otherwise entitled to?
And we don't think that there's an additional free-floating requirement about emergency status that has to be taken into account.
So it could be an emergency 2 more years from now.
Okay, so all really, really good questions. Amy Coney Barrett out there representing us. Thank you for that. But great questions. What is fully vaxxed? We heard the Australian guy, the mate down there, talking about fully vaccinated versus not vaccinated, or, not fully vaccinated. What is that now? Because we've got, it was 1 jab, 2 jabs, 3 jabs, boosters, and eventually they're talking about it's going to be more so treated like the flu, where you can have an annual vaccine. Well, do you have to have an annual vaccine every year to be considered fully vaccinated? Are these restrictions and regulations that they're trying to put out there going to continue as time goes on? And she asked these questions. They were great questions, absolutely great questions. Didn't necessarily get the absolute best answers. And as she pointed out, this came as an emergency request to mandate this for large employers. We'll look at this article real quick. From the New York Times, Supreme Court's conservative majority appears skeptical of Biden's virus plan. The court seemed more likely to sustain a separate requirement that healthcare workers at facilities that receive federal money be vaccinated. So see, this is kind of what Congress should be doing. They should be compromising and looking for ways to kind of have a little give and take, not just my way or the highway. But that's not what they're trying to do. They're trying to get it one way and not the other. They're not trying to give any ground at all. I think it was AOC said 100% or nothing or whatever it was on, I think it was the Green New Deal or the spending bill. They wanted everything. They didn't want to compromise. Well, that's not how it works. All right. So here we are at the Supreme Court. It's supposed to be fair, it's supposed to be just. There was a great show from Louder with Crowder. I think it was this past Tuesday, where they played some from the same hearing, same interview, whatever it was, where some of the justices or some of the other people in the video or audio rather didn't seem to have their facts together, and they were just throwing out numbers like there's hundreds of thousands of kids in the hospital right now, there's millions of deaths because of Omicron or whatnot, certain numbers that I'm not looking at right this second, but certain numbers that were clearly inaccurate. And these are people trying to make the decisions, and they're spitting out inaccurate information, false facts, if you will. So shame on them. And if it's somebody who's going to be voting and having a say and really putting forward these restrictions or these mandates or whatever, they need to have the facts, the real facts. And it's very unfortunate to hear that they have twisted the truth. They have picked what they like and what they don't like, or they've just made up their own facts. But Amy Coney Barrett, I really liked her in her interviews to be accepted to the Supreme Court. I'm liking what I'm hearing right now. So I think she was a great pick by Trump. And I think she's doing a great job. Here is an article about it. Like I was saying, if we go down here, the Supreme Court's conservative majority seemed to be leaning on Friday toward blocking one of the White House's main pandemic fighting strategies, expressing skepticism that the Biden administration has the legal power to mandate that large employers require workers to be vaccinated or to undergo frequent testing. The oral argument over that mandate, which rocketed to the court on an emergency basis, now that was mentioned as well, on an emergency basis after a flurry of legal challenges around the nation from Republican-led states, business groups, and others, raised the prospect that the court might deal a severe blow to the Biden administration's efforts to address the coronavirus as the highly transmissible Omicron variant continues to spread. A lot there too. So the highly transmissible Omicron variant continues to spread. We're going to come back to that in just a minute. So stay with me, okay? Stay with me. Don't go anywhere. I know I'm dragging on a little bit, but this is important because a lot of this is crucial to what's going to happen next, okay? So they're saying, yeah, we don't like the idea of a full mandate. Maybe we can see if it's a federally funded employer, looking at doing something with that. Again, maybe, finding somewhere to meet in the middle. But again, the question is really, is it legal, and do they have the authority to put out the mandate like that? All right, well, continuing on, see what else we got from CNN Health. Nearly a quarter of hospitals are reporting a critical staff shortage as Omicron drives a rise in COVID-19 cases. That title right there, we're just going to stop there, not even going to fully read the article. Again, if I hadn't already said this, I can't remember. All the articles that I go over here, there will be links in the description. You can check it out and do your own research. You know, go behind me. I'm not going to read everything, so if there's something I skip over that's vital, I definitely want you to know about it. Definitely don't want to hide it from you. Go out there and read it, check it out. But that headline right there is alarming for a couple of things. One, nearly a quarter of hospitals are reporting a critical staff shortage. We're going to talk about that in just a second. Okay. As Omicron drives a rise in COVID-19 cases. So we were already talking a minute ago about how Omicron is spreading, right? And how there's a rise in cases. Keep that in mind. We've got another article we're going to go to here in just a few minutes that's going to address that. But right now, I wonder what's causing the staff shortages. All right, so here's an article, COVID, why California is moving forward with firing vaccine-resistant healthcare workers. Another one, New York's largest healthcare provider fires 1,400 employees who refuse to get vaccinated. Another, Friday marks deadline to receive vaccine for hospital workers unvaccinated fired. COVID vaccine deadline at 3 healthcare systems leaves some hospital workers without a job. Another, hundreds of hospital staffers fired or suspended for refusing COVID-19 vaccine mandate. Another, vaccination-related employee departures at 52 hospitals' health systems. And lastly, thousands, not hundreds like it shows right there, thousands of workers are opting to get fired rather than take the vaccine. So what we're really seeing here in so many ways is a self-inflicted wound. Okay, you can argue that the cases are going through the roof and the hospitals aren't expecting all these people. I doubt that's the case. But you can't fire, get rid of, terminate, suggest they leave these nurses, these other healthcare workers, and then turn around and say, oh, we don't have enough people working. A hospital wants to have full beds. They want to be at max capacity as much as possible. That's how they make money. I talked about that in the last video. Okay, I know plenty of people that work in the healthcare system, a lot of them in management. They said, yeah, we want to be at full capacity. That's how we make the money. If we have empty beds, that's money we're not making. That's a sad truth about our healthcare system. Sorry to break it to you, but they are in business to make money too. All right. So to have a shortage, either cases are going up so high, so fast, so severe that they have to bed more people than they're capable of doing, or they don't have enough staff. And we have seen over this last year, at the end of the year, beginning of this year, whatever it was, they've kind of rounded that out where they've been getting rid of employees because they have opted not to take the jab. This is a self-inflicted wound, but they're going to portray it like this, like it's an emergency, so they can push those emergency bills to the Supreme Court, to Congress, to whoever, okay? Because they want you to believe that it's a super huge emergency and that it's taking over. But stay with me, okay? So we see the self-inflicted wound that we're dealing with right now in 2022. Some of it's from things that have already happened in 2022. A lot of it's baggage from 2021 when all these firings or layoffs or whatever started happening, right? Well, let's go back even further to 2020 and take a look at this article right here, this fact checker by Reuters, I think you say it. Okay, so Reuters fact check 94% of individuals with additional causes of death still had COVID-19. So this is a statement that was making the rounds on it. It specifically says Facebook and it says Trump shared it, but through social media, this statement was making the rounds back on September 3rd of 2020 is when this article was posted. Okay. The very first paragraph right here, shared thousands of times on Facebook, post claims that the CDC quietly updated its COVID-19 data to admit that only 6% of all deaths recorded actually died from COVID. According to the post, the CDC stated that the other 94% of people died from other causes. And then it says this claim is false. There's all these fact checker sites and they'll always say, well, there's a hint of truth to that, or, you know, that's partially false, or however many Pinocchios, I don't know. This said, this claim is false. declaratively, this is false, definitively, no wiggle room, right? Down here, this post began circulating on social media in late August 2020 as the number of recorded U.S. deaths related to the novel coronavirus topped 180,000. President Trump, this is important, President Trump downplaying the pandemic's domestic death toll ahead of the November 3rd election shared the claim on August 30th in a tweet that has since been removed by Twitter, which we know is obvious because he's been removed from Twitter, right? But the point of that was President Trump downplaying the pandemic's domestic death toll. So they said that the claim is false and that by saying that, you're downplaying it, right? Okay, well, how about this? Here's an article from Tuesday, January 11th, 2022. CDC, 94% of COVID-19 deaths had underlying medical conditions. What then? Now, look, I understand how Trump can say things. I understand how these posts and these numbers and everything can be manipulated. I get that. Okay. What may have been said, what may have been said is that COVID was not the cause of deaths for these people, when in actuality, it still could have been the cause of death, even though they had all these other comorbidities, these other illnesses, right? So I get that. But as we're going to see, there's very, very, very many people that died of COVID may have just died with COVID along with these other comorbidities. Let's check this out. Says the Center for Disease Control released information showing how many people who died from COVID-19 had comorbidities or underlying conditions, as they are sometimes referred to by doctors. Okay. And it does say here, according to the CDC, just, for reference, a comorbidity is defined as more than one disease or condition is present in the same person at the same time. Conditions described as comorbidities are often chronic or long-term conditions. Other names to describe comorbid conditions are coexisting or co-occurring conditions, and sometimes also, you get the point. All right, so having multiple illnesses that could or do cause death, right? Now, it's got a link here to the CDC site, and it says here before I go over there, because we're going to go over there. All right, it goes over there, it quotes it, that the table 3, and we'll look at table 3, shows the types of health conditions and contributing causes mentioned in conjunction with deaths involving coronavirus. This does not, however, mean that COVID-19 did not cause a person's death. That's what I'm saying. That could have been the verbiage that's wrong. That could have been false. It doesn't mean that 1, it was being downplayed, or 2, that the statement was entirely false. Okay? It could have been downplayed because, I don't know, maybe it should have been. We've shut the entire world down for something where 94% of people that have died of COVID have died of COVID with other comorbidities. And you've got a list of them here. Well, let's just go ahead and jump over to the CDC site. Okay. And this number is a little alarming too. It goes on to say the same thing. Here's our table 3 that it was talking about. For over 5% of these deaths, COVID-19 was the only cause mentioned on the death certificate. For deaths with conditions or causes in addition to COVID-19, on average, there were 4 additional conditions or causes per death. Okay, 4 additional things that had to be going on in their body for them to die. Say that's well, it says 94%. This says over 5% were just COVID. So the numbers may have changed a little bit. So you're looking at 95+% of people who died of COVID on average had at least had on average 4 other comorbidities. That is alarming. It's alarming in the sense that we freaked out over something that may not have been as lethal as we thought. Now, the whole time it's been, stay away from the elderly, stay away from the most vulnerable. Now, New York didn't do that. They threw the sick in with the, hospitals and the retiree homes and whatnot like that. Probably not the best thing to do, but they did. And that's what you do in New York, I guess. But my point here is they're saying that it was being downplayed. Now let's go ahead and look at some things that they're doing now or saying now that may make you kind of question things a little bit. Okay. Let's see this next one. All right. From AP, COVID case counts may be losing importance amid Omicron. The explosive increase in U.S. coronavirus case counts is raising alarm, but some experts believe the focus should instead be on COVID-19 hospital admissions, and those aren't climbing as fast. How about that? So before, when everything was coming out and the elections were coming up, CNN and everybody had those little counters on their screen about how many cases there were, and cases were going up and up and up and up and up. But as we just saw, most of the deaths, which they weren't really tracking as heavily at all, were from an average of 4 additional comorbidities, right? Well, now they're wanting to shift the narratives. Why? Because cases are spiking, because Omicron is spiking again, because it is significantly more contagious, but it is less lethal. So now that they got their guy in the White House, and look, understand this, Trump's got faults. Biden's got a lot more faults. Okay. There's things I have issues with on the right, the left, everywhere. Okay. But right now, he's the guy in the White House. So I'm going to pick on him, and I'm going to pick on his administration because they're the ones that are there right now. As soon as someone else is there, I'm going to do the same thing to them. So I'm going to be fair as can be. Okay. Now we talked about this again about independent content creators versus major news corporation media who are in the pockets of who, and we'll get to all that later in this show specifically as well. But we may have our bias, but we'll tell you up front. We're going to give you our opinions, but I'm going to give you links to articles that news networks don't give you, so you can't do your own research. Okay, so we're going to look at this. The cases are climbing, the hospitalizations are not. It's a more favorable number to the current administration if they shift gears. This next article right here. So Fauci again. The highly contagious Omicron variant will find just about everybody, Fauci says, but vaccinated people will still fare better. Okay, so we got more people vaccinated, so they're going to fare better. Hospitalizations are going to be down. But it's highly contagious, going to get everybody. So it makes sense then. Let's not count the cases, because if everyone's getting sick or everyone's catching it, rather, the cases are going to be through the roof. We don't want to track that. It's going to make this guy look bad. Keep that in mind. It is a mind game that they are trying to play on you. Okay? But light at the end of the tunnel, my friends. Omicron may be headed for a rapid drop in the U.S. and Britain. This article came out, Wednesday from the AP. Okay, scientists are seeing signals that COVID-19's alarming Omicron wave may have peaked in Britain and is about to do the same in the U.S., at which point cases may start dropping off dramatically. The reason the variant has proved so wildly contagious that it may already be running out of people to infect. That's funny, and I chuckle there. But from my understanding, and again, I'm no expert in this. I encourage you to do your own research, look at different sources on this. But my understanding is that viruses will morph, and that's how you get the variants, right? They'll adapt, they'll adjust because they want to infect more people. I say they want to, but the idea is that more people will be infected by this. It will have a longer life, but to do so, it will be more contagious, but will be less severe, right? The wonderful thing about that is that if someone's getting Omicron and it's not all that severe, their body is still building that natural immunity against the virus. And by so many people being vaccinated, natural immunity, and the virus getting less and less and less severe from every different variant that's coming out, like others have said, maybe we will be treating this like the flu. Maybe it'll never go away and it'll just be a cold or virus or bug that people get randomly. That would be wonderful, wouldn't it? Or maybe it already has been, and instead of being downplayed, it's been blown out of proportion by those that want to control where you go, when you go, and how you live your life. There is power in that. Moving on. Next story. Let's reflect back on the wonderful January 6th and everything that had to go on there. Okay. So there's some people that think that January 6th was, as they say, a nothing burger. Really, nothing going on there, nothing to see. To some people, and we'll see in a minute, it's one of the worst days that has ever existed. This article right here from the AP says Biden warns of U.S. peril from Trump's dagger on democracy. And this article, he goes on to blame Trump of trying to overthrow the democracy, condemning the protester, calling them rioters, calling them un-American. And as we're going to see here, January 6th was compared to Pearl Harbor and the tragedy of September 11th.
Certain dates echo throughout history, including dates that instantly remind all who have lived through them where they were and what they were doing when our democracy came under assault. December 7th, 1941, September 11th, 2001, and January 6th, 2021.
I can't stand that woman. So Vice President Harris, who calls January 6th is equally evil and as unforgettable as Pearl Harbor and September 11th. It's so unforgettable that they have to keep reminding you about it. Look, we're going to look at an article here in just a few minutes about how they may have been overplaying a few things about that. But before we do, she is condemning these people, again, as vice president, and I condemn anyone who went there with the sole intention to harm someone, to overthrow the government. I don't think these were things that were going through most people's heads. This was a protest. Some may even say a riot, and I would agree with that, right? But I wouldn't say it was a violent one. I wouldn't say it was murderous or deadly, although one person died. Now, unfortunately, and that was someone shot by Capitol Police. Okay, one death. Now, we can compare that with the Summer of Love, where Black Lives Matter, Antifa, whoever it is burning down entire communities because of the death of fill in the blank, whatever the reason, right? And I 100% support protesting, okay? 100% support anybody for any reason protesting. Even, I don't say even riots, but sometimes you got to get ugly, and I get that. But to say that January 6th was that bad, and then to read articles like this, and to hear stories about what she and others have done with those that were rioting and destroying property, and with the Summer of Love, there were significantly more deaths from the protests, riots, what have you, than there were that they were even protesting. If someone was shot and killed by a cop, one person, right? As tragic as that may have been, as unjustified as it may have been, or even justified, multiple people died through multiple riots. And so it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense why that is the preferred route to go. But Vice President Kamala Harris, it says, this is from Snopes, which I believe is a fairly left-leaning fact-checking site itself. Did Kamala Harris bail out violent rioters during George Floyd protests? So we did hear about celebrities and tweets about celebrities and politicians bailing these folks out. Vice President Harris and others in the administration are condemning Republicans for trying to do the same for people that are in jail right now, still from January 6th of last year, on the count of trespassing. No one that I know of at this point has been charged for insurrection, only trespassing. And they've still been in jail for a year now, over a year now at this point. So she's condemning them and giving them a hard time. But let's read this. So Snopes does say that it's mostly false. So what I was saying earlier, this is not a definitively false statement, but it's mostly false. What does it say? Harris expressed, what's true? Harris expressed support for a nonprofit called the Minnesota Freedom Fund, which pays criminal bail and immigration bonds, and encouraged her supporters to donate to it during the protest over Floyd's death in the summer of 2020. What's false? However, Harris did not donate money to the nonprofit before, after, or during the protest, according to its records. Additionally, no evidence shows people who received bail or bond assistance from MFF for arrest during the demonstrations committed more crimes after their initial detainment, which isn't really relevant to this conversation. Did she support these people? Did she give money? Well, it says not directly, but she supported an organization that did. There are tons of tweets out there from politicians, from celebrities that were supporting them. But then, as of January 6th, 2021, that is the worst thing to happen in America since September 11th, apparently. And those people are worse than the people that were burning down cities. Those people are anti-American. Those people are trying to overthrow democracy. It was one of the most peaceful protests in the last 3, 4, 5 years that I've seen. Now, some of it was ugly. I'm not going to lie. Some of it, there was pushing and shoving. And like I said, there was one death. But we're going to see in a little bit that it may have been a little over-exaggerated. All right, so one of the things that the media continues to push out there, and not just the media, but Congress, the oversight committees, or whatever's going on, January 6th committee, I think, is an actual name of a group now. But they just keep pushing, and they've done this forever now. They continue to push portions of speeches given. They keep quoting Trump for saying, fight like hell, right? He kept saying, fight like hell. He incited the riots. He incited the violence. He incited the takeover of democracy, whatever that may be. Okay, it's not like capture the flag. If you get in and you get the flag, you become the new president or something like that. It's not how it works. Okay, and they know it's not how it works. It's all ridiculous. It's all a show. Okay, but they got to keep pushing that out there, and they got to keep pushing the coronavirus out there, so you keep being submissive to them and everything that's going on, and you vote for the right people come midterms and come 2024. But we'll get into the midterms in just a little bit. Let's take a look at the pot calling the kettle black. All right, so here's a tweet from Representative Jamie Raskin. The GOP rush to replace Justice Ginsburg is all about destroying the Affordable Care Act, women's health care, and reproductive freedom, and the voting rights and civil rights of the people. We must fight like hell to stop this assault on health care and the Constitution. A tweet from Ted Lieu. I like that, but I like better, quote, when they go low, we fight back. Another one from Jamie Raskin. Constitutional patriots of all parties must demand immediate investigations into hashtag Trump Russia. This is our democracy. Fight for it. A tweet from Joe, I don't know how to say this last name, Najuse. Honored to have the support of Senator Kamala Harris. Truly humbled to have the support of such a fearless leader as we fight to take back Congress and to make Colorado history. Last but not least, a tweet from Joe Biden. That's why I've spent my whole career fighting, and I will continue to fight like hell so that no one ever has to make that walk again. So if the phrase fight like hell is subject to be considered inciting violence or an insurrection, what about those guys? When are they going to be on trial? Okay. When are they, even though maybe no one and violence broke out or protest? I mean, I know they'll say that, but you cannot then tie the phrase fight like hell to anything that incites violence, especially when you leave this part out of Trump's speech from the same day, the same speech.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
All right, let me play that again. For those of you that may not have heard that before, yeah, that was in the same speech. I know mainstream media isn't playing that part of it, but let's check it out again.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
Peacefully and patriotically is what he said. Okay, if we're going to say that he said fight like hell, that's fine. But you also have to submit that he said peacefully and patriotically. Okay? If Fight Like Hell was inciting the violence and stirring them up, peacefully and patriotically calms them down, right? You can't have one without the other. It's in the same speech. That's just like all those times that they say he never condemned white supremacists, or that, what was it? There were good people on both sides. Did he say that? Yes. What did he say directly after that? I'm not talking about the white supremacists or the skinheads or the Nazis or whatever it is. He called them out and says, I'm not talking about them, but they don't play that part in the news because they don't want you to know that. Let's look at some more manipulation. All right, so we're back over at CNN now. Surprise, surprise. How a pro-Trump mob besieged the Capitol. Okay? And it gives a timeline of the events and everything that happened. Here's a few things I found very interesting. All right. Again, there were parts that were either violent, you could call it, or extreme or whatever. But there's also some questions about who was inciting it. And if, again, I'm a conspiracy theorist, but I'll try to steer clear of it. But if there were FBI or CIA people involved to get it kicked off. Okay, so here's one of the things. All right, pro-Trump rioters storm the Capitol. Check this out.
I've never been in this house. How about you? No, you own it. That's right. We own it. We own you.
Didn't look like a whole lot of storming to me. Loud, obnoxious, vulgar. But they were walking inside the stanchion still, like they were on a freaking tour. How is that the worst, a worst attack on democracy ever? But that's how they keep portraying it. Okay, what else we got to look at here? Boom. Pause. Okay, so Fox News tops ratings for coverage on January 6th anniversary events. You know why? Same reason that Gutfeld is the king of late night right now. Because people are tired of being not just fed, but force-fed. These same talking points, the same agenda, the same ideas from everywhere. Late night shows, every 24-hour news media, anywhere. Okay, it is being shoved down everyone's throat and people are tired of it. You know why Fox News topped the ratings? Because they had more interesting things to talk about, quite honestly. And it says right here, we're going to say, throughout the day, Fox News averaged 1.6 million viewers as cable news highlighted the one-year anniversary of supporters of former President Trump storming the Capitol in an attempt to stop certification President Biden's electoral win, according to the Nielsen Media Search. Fox News was top-rated cable news network during coverage of Biden's and Vice President Harris's speeches commemorating January 6th with 1.6 million viewers. It goes down to talk about guests on the show, and those shows or clips of shows or segments getting up to 2.5 million viewers, 1.5 million viewers, just demolishing their competition. Again, because I think they're speaking differently than everyone else, and everyone's tired of it. All right. So basically, that AP article stated that it was a deadly assault on the U.S. Capitol, which we know it wasn't. There's one killed by a Capitol police officer, was in a deadly assault. Okay. Here's another one. Around 2/3 of Americans describe the day as very or extremely violent. It wasn't. Videos and pictures tell a different story. Believe what you see, not what you're told. Okay? You are being fed a narrative. Conspiracy theorists decide. We'll talk about this toward the end of the show. I have another segment coming up. We're going to talk about that. Okay? But you are being fed partial truths, lies, misinformation, fake news, whatever you want to call it, because there is a narrative to be pushed. They want you to feel a certain way, think a certain way, act a certain way. They want to control you by controlling the information. It's up to you on whether you're going to let them or not. All right, taking a look here, we can see that we talked about last year and how the entertainment industry hadn't really learned their lesson by pushing their agendas and their diversity and their inclusion and everything, right? Well, let's take a look at this. NBC will not air Golden Globes in 2022 due to ongoing FP or HFPA controversy. Now, this was an article posted last year, but for those that didn't know, the Golden Globes just occurred and NBC didn't air it. They still gave out the awards and all, and I would imagine that, you know, people that would have protested still probably accepted the awards if they won. But what was the reason for that? Why didn't they air it? Well, apparently the Hollywood Foreign Press are all very, very racist.
Many talented people of colour were snubbed in major categories. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about that. The Hollywood Foreign Press are all very, very racist. So, fifth time. So, we were going to do an in memoriam this year, but when I saw the list of people that had died, it wasn't diverse enough. It just, no. It was mostly white people, and I thought, nah, not on my watch. So, maybe next year. Let's see what happens.
The great Ricky Gervais. That that monologue, and every time he got the mic, that was 2020. 2020. That was the best. If you haven't seen that, you need to search Ricky Gervais 2020 Golden Globes. He just rocked everybody in the house, made fun of the celebrities, the whole idea of celebrityism, I guess you would call it. And that's what we wanted to hear. Us normal folks just wanted them to, you know, get taken down a peg or two. He does an incredible job. Here's a less incredible job from last year.
You know, this is probably something we should have told you guys earlier. Everybody is understandably upset at the HFPA and their choices. Look, a lot of flashy garbage got nominated, but that happens, okay? That's like their thing. But a number of black actors and black-led projects were overlooked.
And look, we all know that award shows are stupid.
Yeah. They're all a scam invented by Big Red Carpet.
To sell more carpet.
We know that.
The point is, even with stupid things, inclusivity is important, and there are no black members of the Hollywood Foreign Press. I realize HFPA, maybe you guys didn't get the memo because your workplace is the back booth of a French McDonald's, but you got to change that. So here's to changing it.
Yes, I'm looking forward to that change.
There are 2 white women on stage. There are no women of color on stage. There are no, that I know of, gay women or men on stage. It's funny that diversity really only goes when it doesn't apply to your job. When it's someone else, you can point the finger at it. Yeah, force them to do it. Look, as a Hollywood Foreign Press, they don't have to be diverse, okay, in their committees and councils or whatever organizations. That's something they don't have to do. They can still acknowledge and give out awards. In fact, I saw, was it Will Smith, who, if you're not aware, is a black man, won a Golden Globe for the King George movie, where he plays Venus and Serena Williams' father. Okay, I'm sure he did an outstanding job. I didn't see the movie, but I'm sure he did an outstanding job. Probably absolutely deserved the award, won the award. But, you know, diversity everywhere. But both of them made jokes about that. It's almost like it's an inside joke. Kind of like...
Congratulations, you 5 ladies no longer have to pretend to be attracted to Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah, that was a thing. That was said. And now look at where we are. Didn't have a problem with it before, and all of a sudden now it's a problem, huh? I'm not talking about the Weinstein thing. That's clearly a problem. But diversity everywhere has to be the utmost priority. And we talked about it last week, and how The Eternals was the big film that pushed so many different people of color and sexual orientation. And every time someone got in front of a camera, that's all they talked about was the diversity, diversity, diversity. Well, the movie just bombed. From everyone who I've heard of that has saw the movie or have seen the movie, I'm from the South, y'all. Bear with me. from everyone I've heard from that has seen the movie, that's what they say. It was all about the diversity, and the story lacked, the character development lacked, even though the characters were supposed to be all about it. That's not what defines your character, though, is the color of your skin or your sexual orientation. There's so much more that defines a character, that makes up a character arc. But that's where they wanted to, that's where they wanted to lean. So God bless them. All right. So moving on. All right. So something else not happening this year. Also in variety, the Grammy Awards officially postponed. Now in this article, they go about citing COVID as the case for what's going on here, why it's postponed. But I mean, come on. I think we all really know that nothing good since Outkast double album in 2003's come out. I'm just saying, that was a classic instantaneously. And I mean, you're not going to do better than that. Come on. Look, I'm sure none of this has to do with anything about celebrities building themselves up, patting themselves on their back, being holier than thou, virtuous signaling every chance they get when they're on TV, which continues to drop ratings. The ratings for all these shows have continued to drop. In fact, check this out. Everyone's staying home, and they're still not watching these award shows. What are they watching? This should not be the case. If something is on TV right now, available at home right now, it should be tearing things up. The ratings should be through the roof, not being cut down by half of what they were in previous years. But yet here they are. I mean, I think it's quite obvious that this speaks to the quality, not the quantity, because there's all kind of stuff out there that can be watched. But people are going to pick and choose what they're going to want to watch based off of the quality of it, right? Well, nobody likes seeing these celebrities not just pat themselves on the back. We've been watching that for years and had no problem with it. But the problem comes to when they get in front of the mic, who are they thanking? Who are they condemning? I mean, so many celebrities for the last couple of years have been condemning anyone on the right. If you were a Trump supporter, don't watch my movie. Well, what do we see there? Well, they quit doing it. Don't read my comics. Don't watch my TV show. Well, ratings are dropping all left and right, all over the place. More left than right. But ratings are dropping because they are alienating their audience. And then they turn around, they want to play the victim on things. I don't know. All right. Let's see what we've got to look forward to this year. Last week we looked at 2021. We looked at the results. We broke it down very specifically in like the top 10 of what we were looking at. So let's see what 2022 has in store for us. So here's a list of the stuff that's coming out in 2022. All right. So we still got Spider-Man rolling over from 2021. That's killing it. Sony also did awesome with Venom, right? Let There Be Carnage. But this starts off talking about superhero movies, and really, honestly, the biggest superhero movies last year didn't do that great. Spider-Man and Venom, if you want to call Venom a superhero movie, they nailed it. They did great. But the MCU kind of fell flat. I wonder why. Let's look at this. The top movies coming out in 2022 that will boost the box office as superhero films thrive and the industry continues to recover. Now, Spider-Man is a great indicator that you can make a film and make money at the theater. It is not an indication that we're in a full recovery for bad movies. And now they're going to play that game though and say, oh, well, we're still going through a pandemic, so people still aren't coming out. Spider-Man proved that wrong. People lined up and came to the theaters multiple times to see Spider-Man, right? It's going to hit $2 billion potentially. The pandemic didn't slow them down. If somebody wants to see something, they're going to go see it. All right. As we scroll through here, and I'm not going to read all these, but we can see things like Scream, Uncharted, The Batman, Downton Abbey, Morbius, another Sony one, right? Sonic Hedgehog 2, Fantastic Beast, Doctor Strange, Top Gun. I mean, almost every single one of these is either a reboot or a sequel. And we are tired of Hollywood rebooting and sequeling everything. Look, as a filmmaker, I can tell you there's plenty of other filmmakers out there that have original stories, original ideas. And I think of some of the best that have ever hit the screen. Ghostbusters. When it came out, there wasn't anything else like it. Well, what if they said, we're not going to do Ghostbusters, but let's do, I don't know, another Look Who's Talking or whatever, the third or fourth or fifth or sixth or seventh one, and just keep that franchise going. We have to get away from all these, sequels and reboots and everything. Now, some of these I'm sure are going to do great. Some are probably going to flop because they're changing characters or changing stories. And let's face it, some of these just don't age too well. The stories themselves, I mean. Some of the actors don't either, but that's a whole nother topic. Here's my predictions, okay? All right, so running through all this, here's what I think. I think you got two categories, right? You've got some movies that will be bad, but they'll do well, right? Movies that are not all that great, but they're going to do well in the box office because they are a Marvel movie or DC movie, or there's a lot of buzz behind it or a lot of fanfare behind it, but the movie itself may not be that great. All right. And then you have your other category that some films are going to be genuinely good and they're going to do good at the box office. And you may, of course, have some that are great and they don't get seen, or some that are bad and, of course, they don't get seen. But the two main ones I'm talking about, bad movies that do well, good movies that do well, as they should. Here's my predictions. So if I'm going with five, top five or whatever in each, movies that are going to be probably bad but do well, and I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for this. I know I am. But The Batman. Okay? I know I should be giving him a chance. But there's so much that I have heard from behind the scenes and I have seen in these trailers that I'm not really digging. Emo Batman is not what I signed up for when I sign up to be a DC fan. When I sign up specifically to be a Batman fan, and I am a huge Batman fan. I think Robert Pattinson is probably a great actor, and I've seen him do some pretty good stuff. And I know he's trying to get away from all the Twilight stuff and everything. But look, everyone that loves the trailer for that one scene specifically where he's beating down a dude just mercilessly. And that is awesome. Don't get me wrong. That's cool. But most of the rest of the trailer, I don't really care for. The way they're portraying the Riddler and the other, villains, and even the riddle that's being said just doesn't seem cohesive. I'm lost in it. Now, I like the idea of it being a detective type kind of film because that's kind of the origins of what Batman was, the great detective. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be that great of a film, but I think it'll do great because I think there's a lot of hype behind it. Another one's going to be Thor, Love and Thunder, with a female Thor. I think because of multiple reasons, it'll probably do good at the box office. I think that's Taika Waititi, and he does make good films, but I think it's going to lack because I think they're going to be pushing their narrative. Another one's going to be The Flash. I think The Flash is not going to be a great film, but I think it's going to really do good at the box office for one reason and one reason alone. That's it. Michael Keaton. I think people will go out in droves to see Michael Keaton as Batman again. I know I want to. All right. One of my absolute favorite movies of all time, or movies, was Michael Keaton playing Batman. Loved him. Had all kinds of games and toys and birthday cakes growing up with Batman on there. Huge Batman fan. A lot of that was Michael Keaton. So I think a lot of people are going to go out and see this because of Michael Keaton. Not because of Ezra Miller or any of the other Flash actors or anything like that. Not because it's going to be the greatest story ever. And from my understanding, they're going to kind of retcon, past DC films. So, whatever. But I think people will go out and see Michael Keaton. Another one's going to be Black Panther. Now, before you go in hard on me, it's not just because of Chadwick Boseman's death and him not being in the film. It's not because they're talking about making, Shuri, the Black Panther now, the sister. I'm sure there's a way to do that. I just don't think they're going to do it the right way. I would imagine that they're going to do it where everybody's big, and everybody that's a female or of a different sexual orientation or whatever it may be, is all high and mighty from the get-go, doesn't have anything to go through, doesn't have to overcome any obstacles, and it's going to be, every man in the movie is going to be an idiot, or something along those lines. Yeah, I think they're going to struggle to do well after Chadwick Boseman's death in general anyway. But yeah, I think they're going to go about doing some things the wrong way, and it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt. But ultimately, I think there's a large audience for that character and that world, and it'll probably do good at the box office. And last for that one's going to be Aquaman. I don't know how great it's going to do. I know the first one did great in the box office. The second one may do great. But again, kind of with DC and Marvel, their track record here lately, I'm not having high anticipations on having a blockbuster, awesome film that's just incredible. Maybe a blockbuster because it'll probably do good numbers, but is it actually that good of a film? I don't know. Here's some I think are going to be probably pretty good, and they may not do the same numbers as some of those other ones, but I think Morbius is probably going to be pretty good. Sony's on a roll. Sony's killing it. Jared Leto's a great actor. He's a little weird, but I think he's a great actor for the most part. If you forget about the Joker, and I don't know if that's all him or just what he was given to work with, but I think Jared Leto's a terrific actor. I think the film Morbius is going to be very interesting. We'll see. But I think it has a lot of potential. And like I said, Sony's on a roll right now, so we'll see. Another one, Doctor Strange. I think it's going to be great. It's always a visually stunning world that Doctor Strange lives in, and I think there's a lot more room to play. And from my understanding, it's supposed to be more of a horror or darker film, and I think that's going to be really, really cool to see that character and other characters develop in that kind of a darker world for Marvel, because Marvel has been very bright and shiny and happy and slapstick humor for so long. Some films have maybe drifted that way a little bit, but for it to really get there with this, I think it's going to be really, really cool. Top Gun, I think it's going to be a great film just because I'm a huge Top Gun fan. I'm hoping that it's a great film. How about that? And I think Tom Cruise typically makes amazing films. There's probably some exceptions out there here and there. But as big of a supporter of the film that Tom Cruise has been, to make it happen and to get it out there in theaters, I think he's thinking it's going to be pretty good, and so I'm going to have to agree. I think it's going to be awesome. Lightyear, something about Lightyear that just bothers me, but I think it'll do good numbers, and it's probably going to be a good film. From my understanding, this is not about Buzz Lightyear the toy, but it's about the person that the toy was based off of. Now, I'm not 100% on that, but I want to say I read that. But you know what? Let's go back to that picture real quick. One of these gives me the warm and fuzzies and nostalgia and looks like a child film. The other one looks like it's going to be a little darker, a little more intense. And I don't know if I get the same feels from that as I do from the classic image there. So I think that's off-putting me a little bit. But ultimately, the film is probably going to be great. I'm just not digging that image, I guess, as much as, I don't know, maybe I should. But I'm sure it'll do good at the box office. I'm sure it'll be a good movie. And then the last one's going to be Black Adam. That's going to be my number 5. I think Black Adam's going to be a pretty good movie, and it's going to do well at the box office, mostly because this has been a huge project for The Rock. The Rock has really, really pushed for this to happen. He's been a big advocate for it. I want to say he's a producer of it, or executive producer maybe, and he's really been behind it from the jump. So with him having so much involvement in there, and he's The Rock, I mean, he's a star that just pulls in audiences. I think the film's going to be pretty good. So that pretty much wraps up what I think of 2022, for the box office. I could be wrong about all that. If you think, if you agree, awesome. If you disagree, that's fine too. But hey, speak amongst yourself in the comments. I want to read what you write. I want to check it out. If you agree with me, let me know. If you disagree, let me know. What are your top picks for 2022? What are you most excited about seeing? And, you know, of all these sequels and reboots and everything, what are you least excited about seeing? And if you made it this far in the video, if you like what you've seen so far, don't forget to give it a like. If you really like what you're seeing and you want to see more of it, consider subscribing. And like I said, comment below, you know, what you think of 2022 or anything else that we're talking about. All right, moving on. All right, we got some trouble in paradise, and I don't mean AOC getting COVID, but I will talk about that briefly. So here's an NBC News article. If you hadn't already heard, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez test positive for COVID. And it talks about 3 other members testing positive and whatnot like that. But yeah, AOC tests positive for COVID, and I'm sure it has nothing to do with this. That's a picture of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in Florida without a mask, not social distancing, with someone else eating and drinking and having the time of her life. Now, I don't know of anyone that would condemn her for going out and having a good time and being maskless and eating and drinking and caring about. I hope everyone has the ability to do that and can do that. And I mean, they should do that. The problem is the hypocrisy there is that she left her state, her district that has these mandates, these restrictions that she is in favor for. She flew to another state where they don't have them so she can enjoy those freedoms. That's where she's getting a little bit of backlash, as you see here. All right, over on Twitter, we got AOC saying, for information on what to do if you're exposed to COVID, test positive, or want to schedule a test or vaccine in New York City, see our roundup of CDC and New York City resources here, and she throws in a link. Well, she tested positive for COVID. The pictures came out. She got a little bit of feedback from some of her, you know, fans, constituents, whatever you want to call it, replying to AOC, I love you, but the trip to Florida was a bad idea. Another one says, the virus just wants to date you. If you don't know what that's in reference to, AOC has on occasion, more than once, said that the media or Republicans that are always talking about her are just doing it because they want to date her. Now, don't get me wrong. I've seen videos and images of her, and she's not the ugliest thing. She's kind of goofy looking to a degree, but then so am I. She's not the ugliest thing out there. She's an attractive girl, and maybe she's got that kind of whatever, that air about her. But she's an adult now. She can't continue to just go around thinking that, oh, well, if they talk bad about me, it's just because they can't have me. Yeah. Whatever.
Dumbass.
Here's another one.
Some people are dumb. Really.
Yeah. So to say that is coming back together. That one comment that the virus just wants to date her is just a mock to that. But I mean, it's something that she said on numerous occasions that people, representatives of Republicans, whatever, they just want to date her. It's stupid, and quite frankly, she may be too. I hate calling people that. I'm just saying, though. I'm just saying. But that's not the trouble in paradise, even though I am talking about New York. Not talking directly about AOC, even though I figured I'd mention her. But let's see what's going on in New York. All right, so we got several things going on here. We're going to start here, though. The newly elected Manhattan DA, Alvin Bragg, claims that lighter punishment for armed robbery and burglary are common sense. Okay, so here's an article. It was this Daily Mail. I don't get the pushback. Woke Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg claims this lighter punishment for armed robbery, and burglary are common sense. At Al Sharpton rally, NYPD commissioner says policy will put the public and cops' lives in danger. We're going to talk about the new NYPD commissioner in just a minute, because it's very interesting to me to see the contrast between the two perspectives, right? So newly elected Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg defended his policies that would bring lighter punishments for armed robbery and burglary. Bragg sent out a memo Monday instructing his office to downgrade burglary, carrying a weapon, and drug dealing from felony charges. For real. He also told Manhattan prosecutors to stop prosecuting low-level offenses and to use prison as a last resort as part of his sweeping criminal justice reform. He claimed his changes would marry fairness and safety, and that he did not understand the criticism he was facing. And we'll get to NYPD commissioner in a minute. All right, so he doesn't understand why he's getting pushback by wanting to downgrade the criminality of certain crimes, the punishment for certain crimes, for drug charges, for violent weapon charges. He doesn't understand the pushback. Again, here's where I cross the line to the other side. There needs to be compromises in what is and what isn't worthy of jail. Long jail sentences, prison, crime even. If someone has a weapon, and I use that term very specifically, and I'll talk more about that in another show. But if someone has a weapon, that means their intent or their actions are actually of using it to hurt someone, to steal something, to break something, right? That is something that we shouldn't be going light on. The whole point of jail is to punish people who do wrong with the hopes and dreams that they come out wanting to not do that again and be better. I do believe that our prison system can use some overhauling. I think people are a little too cushioned in the prison system. But the left is really big on, I forget what they call them, but people that go in and like psychiatrists or whatever, social workers or whatnot, they can go in and reform them. I'm all about that in prison. If they go to jail, that should be part of their jail sentence is that reform, a class, sitting down and having the conversation. I'm cool with that. I think that's great. But they still need to do the time if they do the crime. I know that's cliche, but the whole idea is to get them off streets. If they're raping, killing, stealing, throw them in jail. Throw them in jail. This guy wants to let them go. Okay. So like I said, he doesn't understand the pushback from it. And let's see, I want to say in here, like I said, he doesn't understand the pushback that he's getting. There's the newly appointed Commissioner Keeshant Sewell. We'll talk about her in a minute. She does disagree with him, and she is pushing back against this. But what's interesting to me is that Bragg was promoted or really supported by the new mayor of New York City, Eric Adams. So it says in here, and I'm probably going somewhere. All right, here we go. There's a video. Let's see. Sewell's criticism comes out of step with New York City Mayor Adams, who endorsed Bragg and called him a great prosecutor. All right, so it's her criticism is out of steps with what he says. He calls him a great prosecutor. But there is video right here. I'm not going to play it. But in the video, he does say that he supports Bragg. He supports his vision, and he thinks he's a great prosecutor, and he thinks he's going to clean up the streets. Don't know how that's going to happen if he's not actually cleaning up the streets of criminals. Let's talk about Eric Adams for a little bit. So this is the newly elected mayor, right? Boom. Eric Adams. He just recently, in that same video, well, in a longer version of that video, okay, in that same talk, he made the comment that, what did he say? Cooks, dishwashers, messengers, shoe shine people, those who work at Dunkin' Donuts are low skilled, and that these workers lack the academic skills to sit in the corner office. And now he's getting backlash for that too. So you got the DA that's wanting to keep criminals on the streets as a way to clean up the streets somehow. You've got the new mayor who is essentially talking down to these positions as low skilled when people that work at these positions can tell you it's not low skilled. I've seen it on Twitter where people are just bashing them, says, I've worked at a Taco Bell, at a lunch rush, and now I work in a corner office for an IT firm. And I can tell you which one took more skill than the other, and it's not the one you think. I read that one earlier. But yeah, he's getting backlash for this. And he just recently won, after, who was it? Whoever. Was it Cuomo, de Blasio? I don't know. All those crooked folks up there. Don't know if he's going to be much better. But yeah, so he's already getting pushback for that. So kind of speaking, saying the silent parts out loud is something Democrat folks are kind of known for. It kind of reminds me of somebody else.
Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
Oh yeah, it was that guy. So look, in his talk, okay, in Eric Adams' talks, he ultimately wants local business to open back up. Even if just for a few days a week. And I'm totally for that. I support that. But again, saying the silent parts out loud, the condemning of people that serve your community, that are your neighbors, that are the people that you depend on, really, is not the best way of going about doing that. Now, Eric Adams just recently appointed Keeshant Sewell. Yeah, Keeshant Sewell as the first female police commissioner of the NYPD. Let's get you pulled in on that. Okay. So he just promoted her to this position from where she was. So with that, some of the things said is that, one, the first thing you read in here is that first female police commissioner. Now, while that is a great thing, and again, the diversity or the excitement of breaking that glass ceiling or whatever it may be, that's always exciting. That's always great. And I do support that. But I would hope that she got the position not because she is a female, but because of what she can actually do in that position, what her past shows that she has accomplished, and what the future holds for her. Not just that she's a female, which is what we continue to see from the left, the diversity, whether it's in Hollywood films or whether it's in administrative cabinets. Diversity seems to be the main priority over best person for the job. And I understand the need for the diversity and the inclusion. But at the end of the day, we need the right people in the right jobs, not the right looking or the right orientating, sexual orientation people in the right jobs or whatever it may be. We need the right people where they go.
Come on, man.
All right, moving on. A little bit more about Keeshant. All right, so here's a New York Post article. Eric Adam picks her, first female police commissioner of NYPD. And then he says in here that she was a gut choice. This was a gut choice to select her in this role. And he says she has emotional intelligence. Where's it at? The surprise choice of the 49-year-old from Long Island who has led just 351 uniformed officers for the past 15 months was a gut choice for Adams. Sources say he had favored her for months since the hunt began for the next leader of the largest police force in the country with more than 52,000 members. So she's going from 351 to 52,000. Adams, a former NYPD captain, has long said he would appoint a woman to the post. See, there you go. Again, if she can do it, that's fine. That's awesome. But if the priorities are what's between someone's legs, or the amount of melanin or pigmentation of someone's skin, or who they want to go to bed with at night, then we're kind of going about it the wrong way. It's not just my opinion. A lot of people feel this way. And we've got to get back to the right person for the right job. Okay? But going on, it talks about her emotional intelligence. Adams was keen on the emotional intelligence Sewell showed during the grueling interview process that capped off with an hours-long mock press conference about the shooting of an apparently unarmed black man by a white police officer. So she had to do a mock press conference in this interview, and of course, for the topic, they picked an unarmed black man being shot by a white officer. Sewell projected a calm confidence and ability to connect with the community during the pretend scenario, an Adams source told the Post. So, you know, it's different when you're, I don't know if it's punching up or fighting the power or the whatever it may be, but you know, in some other scenarios, had the scenario itself been different, there may have been some backlash for that, but no one's going to have a problem with this. No one's going to have a problem with this. So she's the former Nassau County Chief of Detectives. She said violent crime is her number one priority. And that goes into why she's pushing back against Bragg. So she's bumping Bragg. If we go back to that article, Sewell, the city's first black female commissioner, sent an email to NYPD officers on Friday saying she's concerned about the effects Bragg's sweeping changes. I've studied these policies and I'm very concerned about the implications to your safety as police officers. She's supporting the police officers here. The safety of the public and justice for the victims, Sewell wrote in the email obtained by the New York Post. So you got Eric. All right. So Bragg was elected. Adams was elected. Adams appointed Sewell, and all three of them seem to be on different pages. So a little trouble in paradise in New York, nothing new there. But it's going to be really, really interesting to see what happens going forward with these three kind of fighting over public safety, fighting over crime, and trying to get the city in order, because there's a lot to get in order up there. And I can be judgmental because, you know, people judge the South, and I'm in Georgia, and they come after Georgia pretty hard. So I'm gonna go after New York. Got a lot to clean up there, and don't know if those three are the ones to do it. And if they are, let's see if they get on the same page. Moving on. All right, so something that's been apparent to a lot of folks for a long time is that it's not always a right versus left, a black versus white. It's the narrative that's pushed a lot, but that's not really what's going on. There is an us versus them. Who is the us? Who is the them? Check out this video clip from Fox News.
Marianne Williamson joins me now. All right, so Marianne, are you considering primarying President Joe Biden?
No.
All right, so that was Marianne Williamson being interviewed by Jesse Waters on Fox News. And just right off the bat, you can clearly see why she lost in the primaries against Joe Biden and the other candidates, because she can answer a question without dodging it for 30 minutes. Let's continue.
Like many, many people, I'm thinking very deeply about what's going on in this country. And I realize that the horse race is not the conversation that most matters. You know, to listen to Fox, to listen to CNN, to listen to MSNBC, it's all about left versus right, isn't it? But I don't think that that's the real political divide that most matters in this country. I think that's kind of a cartoonish version of the political divide in this country that makes billions of dollars for political forces and media forces.
Marianne Williamson just went gangsta, full gangsta on Fox News. She called out Fox, she called out CNN, she called out all the mainstream media, she called out her political party, her political opponents, and laid it out there. It's not a left versus right. It's a have and a have not. It's powerful and the powerless. She's going to continue here in just a minute and call that out a little bit more specifically. And then I've got some more clips to go to. I'm very, very video heavy at this portion, so bear with me. It's all very good stuff and stuff that we need to be aware of, stuff that we need to know. Here she is, continuing this little gangster streak.
The real political divide in this country, Jesse, is between the powerful and the powerless. And the powerful few are headquartered in both major political parties. It is the corporate-backed forces, whether it's big pharmaceutical companies, big oil companies, military defense contractors, etc., that are that are obstructing the financial well-being and the greater economic and professional and just personal opportunities of the American people. That's what concerns me.
I would agree with
Whether or
that,
not I
that
run
there's
for office, I don't
definitely
know.
a big guy versus little guy scenario, and that's always been the case.
Yeah, it has always been the case, but it hasn't always been apparent. Now you've got on news networks, you got celebrities and people that are on the left that are taking up a lot of the time slots on the shows because they're trying to pull on more and more people from the left on the late night shows, late morning shows. They're all left leaning. Even the people on the left are starting to point this out, that there is a divide, not so much on the left and right, but between the media, the haves, the have-nots, or as she said, the powerful versus the powerless. Okay, we know that, but this is confirmation, right? And some people don't know that, and they hate people that vote against them and people that vote different from them because they're told to. They're manipulated to think that way, right? Let's check out this article from. Can't believe I'm going to use an article from Vox, but let's go check that out. Study says politicians listen to rich people, not you. Now, one can say we knew that again, but it's being put out there more and more and more, right? This is an older article, but worth bringing up. Okay, who really matters in our democracy? The general public or wealthy elites? That's the topic of a recent study by political scientist Martin Gillens of Princeton and Benjamin Page of Northwestern. The study's gotten lots of attention over the past year because the authors conclude basically that the U.S. is a corrupt oligarchy where ordinary voters barely matter, or as they put it, economic elites and organized interest groups play a substantial part in affecting public policy, but the general public has little or no independent influence. But can that be right? Let's walk through the study and explain what it shows. Again, I'm not going to go through this whole thing. Okay, I'm actually going to stop right here, in fact, because again, I do have a lot of videos to cut to kind of walk you through some other things that have just kind of been coming out. The link is in the description below for any and all articles that I go over. Okay, so check it out yourself. Read the entire thing. All right, but here's some more confirmation of that. Okay, one of the other things. So one of the shows that I watch is a independent content creator. It's Tim Pool. Tim Pool's got, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 different YouTube channels and shows and everything, and he does a great job. Tim Pool, if you're not familiar with him, and I'm going to link to the specific show that I'm pulling from because I do have several video clips from that show, and I hope he doesn't flag me or anything for that. And I do apologize to him for using so much of his footage, but it's so important, so valid for me to share with you all what was on that show. So if you don't watch Tim Pool or don't know anything about him, he's kind of a center left guy. He's always said that he's a center left guy. But even more recently, he's found himself leaning more to the right. He's one that agrees with me too. That studies with the studies that show that people that are left-leaning typically get their news from only left-leaning sources in a select few. People that lean to the right typically absorb news from both sides and are more open to hearing opposing views, whereas people on the left tend not to. So him being someone who is center left over time has listened to more, pulled up more facts, done some more studying, and in my opinion, in listening to him and things that he's saying, he is starting to lean more to the right, but very much so like me, he teeter-totters on both sides. Now, my biases may be more and more clear as videos come out, but I do feel like I'm very left on some things. I'm very right on some things. I'm very middle of the road on some things. But what I do believe in is that we elect our officials to go and represent us and our interests. That's why we elect them, right? They say they're going to do something. We understand what they believe. We understand where they stand on certain things. So we elect them to go do these things. Well, what really happens in Washington? We're going to look at some clips from Timcast. Again, the link to that show specifically will be in the description because I do use several clips from it. But this was an interview that he did with Marjorie Taylor Greene. She is from my state of Georgia. Now, do I agree with Tim? on everything he posts and everything he talks about and every view he has? No. Do I agree with Marjorie Taylor Greene on every single thing? No. I have to get past those obstacles to hear what she's saying now. Just like if you oppose what I say or what they're saying, I want you to get past it to hear what the actual story is. Let those biases, let those opposing thoughts or fights that you may have internally between Republican, Democrat, whatever, let it go. Listen to what she says. And if this is true, how alarming it is. Okay, several clips. We're going to run through them. I'm going to come back and kind of add some commentating to it a little bit here and there. So bear with me as we go through these. But man, these are powerful, powerful clips from the Timcast show.
You seem like a regular person. And so with that, tell us about what your experience has been like entering Congress.
Ooh.
You were telling us about how they just like do voice votes.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I want everyone to know this. And if you hate me, you still need to know this. Okay. So when I got kicked off committees, I was like, all right, I'm brand new here. I want to learn how this place works. And here's what else you need to understand. If you're the minority party, no one in the minority party has control on committees. The majority party has control on committees. So if Democrats are in control, they're controlling the committees and they control what bills are actually voted on. Republicans have no choice. We can't put a bill to the floor unless we have 218 signatures to pull it out, and we don't have 218.
All right. So that's the first thing that I was unaware of myself, was that if you are the minority party, you're not putting the bills out there. Right. And they're not going to hear them unless you have enough signatures, which the Republicans don't right now. So the party that is the majority, which is the Democrats, they're the ones that are putting forth all the bills to all the committees, all the panels, whatever. So something to keep in mind when we think, well, all these bills are being passed, but nothing's being passed on this side, or what are the Republicans even doing? Well, as we see here, it sounds like they're kind of handicapped right now. They can't do anything. And the reverse is going to be true when the Republicans are the majority. Whoever is the majority is going to be pushing the bills. That's going to change every however many, 2 years, 4 years, or whenever it does. And it's unfortunate because now it's gotten so gridlocked in the House or in Congress in general that it is left versus right so much in those situations that they are not willing to compromise. As like I was saying, I think most people are willing to compromise on most things, but we're seeing that our representatives are not. That's not how they play the game. Let's continue.
I got kicked off committees and I was like, okay, big deal. So I go sit on the House floor, just sitting there watching what's happening, because again, I've never been elected. I've never held office, but here's what happens. So they were debating a bill back and forth, and they're debating it back and forth. And there was someone sitting in Nancy Pelosi's seat, the speaker's chair. Was not Nancy Pelosi. I don't know who it was because they had a mask on and everybody wears masks. And I was like, okay, I don't know who that is. It was actually a man. So they're debating back and forth. And then the guy up there holding the gavel in the speaker's chair calls for the vote by voice. So the Democrats, there was about 5 of them on their side, and there was about 5 Republicans on our side. The Democrats, it's their bill, so they're like, yay, and they're saying, yay, they want to vote for it. The Republicans on our side, they're used to getting defeated at this point because we're into February, and they go, nay, without enthusiasm. And then all of a sudden, the guy up there, Speaker Mask Face, he gavels it in. The bill has passed. And I was like, I'm sitting there holding my voting card in my hand, and I'm like, I didn't vote. And I was so confused. So I call one of the Republican floor staffers, and I'm like, what just happened? And he goes, ma'am, that's how we pass bills.
All right, look, you can judge Marjorie Taylor Greene for not knowing how all that works, or being, unaware of what she was getting into. But that should be alarming, that of all the members of Congress, whether it's the House that's voting on something or the Senate that's voting on something, it's probably the same thing in either one. But that she said there were 5 Democrats and 5 Republicans voting on a bill, and that was it. where's the involvement by everyone else? Is it just figured out that Democrats vote for Democrat stuff, Republicans vote for Republican stuff? I'm appalled to know that that's happening. I hope it angers you a little bit. And we don't know who is and who isn't doing it. And she's going to get into that in a minute. And God bless her for what she's doing. Because again, she may not be perfect. We may disagree with her on several things. But it sounds like she's doing some good up there, or at least trying to, ruffling some feathers and trying to hold people more accountable. Let's continue.
And I was like, I said, what are you talking about? There's 435 members of Congress. There's like 10 people that said yay and nay. I didn't even vote. I didn't say anything. There's a machine. So here's what we have. On every other row, there's a little machine. It looks like a credit card machine. And I have an ID card. It looks like a driver's license. As a member of Congress, you put it in there, and there's 3 buttons you can push. You can push green for yes, red for no, and then there's a yellow one that's for present. I don't know why you need present, but whatever. So I didn't get to vote. No one else voted. It was not recorded. So here's what I found out. Most of the bills in Congress are passed with a voice vote, meaning millions and millions and billions of American taxpayer dollars are passed that way.
Remember.
Come on, man. That's how they're doing it. That's how millions and billions are being voted on by a handful of people. She calls out some things. I think she might be joking, but she might be real as far as some of the things that are being voted on here in just a second. But wow.
We should read the bills, because I can tell you there's horrible things in them.
Isn't it crazy that you're
like
saying that?
$25 million for butterflies. I love butterflies, but do I want to spend? What about $25 million for desert fish?
Well, what about
desert fish?
$10 million for Pakistani gender studies programs.
Oh, it's so important. Pakistanis don't know what gender they are. How many genders do Pakistanis have? Why are American taxpayers paying for
and
that?
speedboats for Sri Lanka. I remember that one too off the top of my head.
Now, I know some of those are real. Some of those are real things that were passed. Real bills, spending bills, for your tax money and my tax money to go to other countries for gender studies. I don't know about the butterflies and the desert fish, but they're voting on these ridiculous things. Like, every time a bill is proposed, there's a lot of meat to it, right? There's hundreds, if not thousands of pages in some of these bills. And as she said, for most of them, the staff is reading them, telling them what to vote on or what's in there, and then they vote. If they vote out of the handful of people that are there. But in all these spending bills, it may sound great to you, like, oh man, they're going to put in a high-speed train system for $8 billion a year is going to go towards that. Well, the spending bill may be $3 trillion. Where's all the other money going? Oh, well, it's going to other countries so they can I don't know, have gender reassignment surgery at our dime so that they can, rebuild and restore DeLoreans or something. There's so much meat and filler and waste in these bills that if they took the time to read it, most of them wouldn't get passed. But they're not taking the time to read it, and they're just passing them because there's not enough opposition to it. Let's keep going.
But I want to talk about roll calling votes. So back to that story, you guys. When I found out that they could pass bills by voice, I also learned floor procedure. So it's like games, right? There's rules on each of us, what we can do. So the next time the bill came up and they were debating the bill back and forth, and I was really paying attention this time, and I had my lovely little book in my lap that I had the rules. The speaker up there, Speaker Maskface is what I call him because I didn't know who it was. He asked for the vote, the voice vote. And this time, so the Democrats are like, yay. And the Republicans over here, nay, because they're used to losing. And right as Speaker Maskface is about to gavel it in, announce the bill has passed, the rule is, as a member of Congress, and any of us can do it, you have to get to the microphone right then, and you have to say, Madam Speaker, I ask for the recorded vote. And I did call him Madam Speaker because gender doesn't count.
She went gangsta too. Yeah, I mean, do what you got to do, right? Know the rules. I mean, again, you can judge her for what you want if she didn't know the rules or whatever. Most of us don't know the rules. So this is educational for us, and that's what this is about. I'm not really highlighting her for anything necessarily. I do think what she's doing is great because she is calling them out and she is holding them more accountable. I do agree with that 100%. But get past all that. This is education to us about how it actually works, what they're doing, what they don't want to do, and she's going to get into that in a minute too. And that's enough to really. Okay, let's keep going.
So here's what happened. It was like just a complete change. When I asked for that, that means at that moment, they have to call all 435 members of Congress, no matter where they are, to come down and vote on that bill. And everyone is on record. So here's the deal. Recorded votes are so important. So I committed myself to that. And I kept on asking for recorded votes. And I kept on asking for recorded votes. And I pissed everybody off. I'm talking about royally.
Good.
Here's what happened. So every time they got called out of their committee meeting. They got called out of their lunch with lobbyists. They got called out of their fundraising calls that they were sitting there begging for money. They had to wake Jerry Nadler up from his nap. I mean, it was unbelievable. Everybody had to come in and vote. What else did it do? It messed up the schedule. Nancy was very upset because they had a whole schedule. Bills were flying through, and all of a sudden they weren't flying through anymore.
All right, so I want you to hear what she's saying. That all right, backing up a little bit. So the party that holds the majority is the one putting all the bills forward. If people aren't showing up to vote, more than likely those bills are going to pass, right? So those bills are passing. And all those bills are Democrat sponsored, Democrat written, Democrat, left leaning, progressive, whatever bills, which some of them are probably okay. I'm not going to knock them. I don't know what the bills are, but without opposition, without compromise, without anyone being held accountable, they're just flying through. So yeah, I'm sure Nancy and everyone else on the left was super stoked to see all this progress happening. Well, as soon as she starts calling these called votes, it throws a wrench in the gears. And like you said, it pisses everybody off. Left, right, and you're going to see it left and right. Every one of them. Because that's not the way they do it.
Cori Bush's bill. I defeated her bill. It was really important. Her bill actually passed by voice until I asked for the recorded votes.
Whoa. Which bill was it?
It would have allowed felons in prison to vote.
Oh, wow.
That's what her bill did.
Yeah.
So it won by the voice, but then when you double checked it, they were like, oh, we made a mistake. She didn't.
When I asked for the recorded votes, even Democrats voted against her. Wow. We had 318, I believe it was 318 no votes on Cori Bush's bill to allow felons in prison to vote. I have put and led the effort to put the entire United States Congress on record so that Democrats can look up their representative and say, how did my Democrat that I voted for vote? Republicans, how did my Republican representative vote? I think this is extremely important for everyone across the country to know the job performance of their representative.
The establishment can't be happy with you.
Oh, no. I got in trouble with Republicans, too. As a matter of fact, I got chewed out. I mean, chewed out. You want to know why? Marjorie, people don't want to be on record.
Let what she just said sink in again. I'm going to play it again. And she whispered it a little low. Turn the volume up a touch. Listen to what she just said.
People don't want to be on record.
No.
Meaning they don't want their constituents to know how they voted.
We have people that we have voted for, or maybe voted against, but people that the people have voted for that are representing us in Congress that don't want their votes accounted for. They don't want a record of it. They don't want you to know what they voted for and what they voted against. That's why she was saying earlier, there's a button to press if you're for it, if a button to press if you're against it, and there's a button to press for president. That's why that button's there, because some people don't want a vote recorded saying yay or nay. They want to toe that middle line. Well, we shouldn't be electing people to do that. There's hardly any bills or anything that should be coming out that way. You're either pushing a bill and you're supporting it, or you're knocking it down because it's not what it needs to be. all that present or all that voting by voice where they're not being held accountable, that is all for their sake and not yours. That's all for them to save face. And when it comes election season again, which it's midterm election season. We're going to talk about that right quick. When it comes election season, no one's going to be able to put out a negative ad that they voted against something that would help you. And but they'll probably say they voted for something that helped you, but there's no record that's going to exist for a lot of the stuff that has passed or been knocked down or whatever, because they're doing these floor, just random voice votes, and they're not being held accountable. So here's what's going on. It's 2022, right? This is midterm. So if you hadn't already started seeing some election ads, flyers coming in the mail, whatever it may be, promotions on social media, it's midterm season. There are plenty of seats available. There's a website called Ballotpedia. I'm not super familiar with it, but I did come across it in my studies of kind of getting ready for the show here. And it does show, and this says United States Senate elections of 2022, but it does have the other branches here, and it shows you who's running. There's a ton of information on the site, but if you come on down here a little bit more, it'll tell you who's running by state, who the incumbent is, Democrat, Republican. You can click on them and it'll give you some information about them. There's going to be links to their site so you can read about them and see where they stand. Look, the 2022, all right, it's 2022, it's January. We'll be having elections, November? Start now looking at who's running in your state, and not just for Senate or for House, but I know, I think we've got a governor election coming up in Georgia. In fact, I know we do. We got a governor election coming up in Georgia. There's going to be local elections coming up. It would behoove you to start researching those candidates now. See who is going to be running for office in your local community, your local board of this and that and the other, your Senate, your Congress, your governors, your mayors, whoever it may be. Don't just go to the polls every 4 years and vote for the president. Okay, this is really, as we're seeing, this is where things are won and lost by who has control over the House, who has control over the Senate. Okay, if we sit idly by, whether you're on the left or the right, I'm not leaning one way or the other in this conversation. Regardless of where you are in this, you need to do your homework, figure out who you're going to vote for, why you're going to vote for them, and I would highly recommend a couple of things. One, once you find your candidate, tell the people about the candidate. What do you like about them? Maybe even stuff you don't really care about them. You can tell them how they compare to other candidates, whatever. But tell people, promote that person, right? And then ask them if they're voting. See if your friends and family are voting. If not, offer them a ride to the polls. Make sure they're registered. It's January. We got time. Okay. I don't know. I say that. I don't know what the stipulations are per area, state and whatnot like that, but should have time. Help them out. Help them get. This is a big deal. People often overlook the midterm elections because they're always focused on those, big every 4 years with the president and everything. And those are big. Don't get me wrong. Those are big. But the people that are in Congress, oftentimes, and in your local communities too, in your state and everything, often have more direct powers than whoever's sitting in the White House. Yes, they're the president. Big, bad, and awesome. That's great. But a lot of what they do doesn't impact you and I as directly as what our state representatives do, what our governors do, what our local heads of like New York City mayor like that, right? What those guys are pushing out there are going to directly affect those communities. And you have someone in your state, in your city, in your district or whatever, that's going to be pushing things that are going to affect you directly. A lot more so than the guy or woman or whoever or whatever it's 2022, whatever, sits in the White House going forward. Okay? So get active, get out there. Let's see, vote in the primaries, vote in the midterms. Don't sit this one out. We need more of the powerless in office. If this is the powerful versus the powerless, we need more of us in there. More of the powerless in there representing us, changing the tide, changing how things work. We need to reclaim the people's house. That's what it's called, right? The people's house, right? We need to reclaim that. We the people, that phrase is so powerful. That's supposed to be who's running the show. But we are always, and I forget who said this, it might have been Reagan. No, it wasn't. It was way, way back. He was one of the founding fathers, I think. We're always one generation away from losing it. So get out there and vote. Get others to vote. Be proactive. We the people run this country. Don't forget that. You have not only a right, but an obligation to reclaim this country, the freedoms, and the representation you deserve. We'll see y'all next week.
All the mamas in the house always got these threats. You know, these threats they don't never do. They don't make no sense. Like, keep on running your mouth, and I'm gonna rip your lips off your face. You're like, when did you ever do that? Say one more thing to me. I'm gonna rip your arm off, beat you to death with it, and sew it back on. You don't have the medical capabilities to do such a thing.